60 FPS for World War Z benchmarks. Console players used to play at 30 FPS, PC gamers at 60, and some professional pros usually like to play at 144 FPS or higher. So let's jump into we got some video of some gameplay, ultra versus low, and some different FPS number graphs and benchmarks. Here is the PC system we're using, a 9900K, 5 GHz. We're using the RTX 2060. We'll have the other cards tested a little bit later today, but we did a couple different tests for this. So let's just jump into some of the numbers. So first off, we're going to start off with Ultra. We have some Shadowplay recording, which you get a little bit of an performance impact. We'll talk about that more on the graph. But basically, we're seeing around 85 to 90% GPU usage. So we get to see a 1935 boost clock on the clock, and then around 3,000 or so on the VRAM and 8,000 RAM. So pretty interesting numbers there. And we're seeing around 129 FPS or so in capture points. We tested 3 different sets, capturing a point, not much going around, fighting multiple people, and then the swarms for zombies. So we were on the domination swarm setting for zombies in the multiplayer PvP. So a lot of crazy stuff was usually going on in action. So that was pretty good. We tested 4 of the 5 maps with each of the 3 settings. So we'll get to jump all into that. So let's jump into some of the graphs. So again, we saw 85 to 90% GPU usage, so not the most optimal, but here are some of the maps. The museum map is capping a point, 140-90 FPS, and a fight was at 140-42 FPS, and then the zombie spawns were 133 FPS. So we just started dipping below the 144 FPS sweet spot right there, and then your 1% low is 67. It did dip down pretty low during zombies. And then we had the Camp Humphreys at 134 FPS, and the fights and the spawns were at 119 FPS. So a little bit of variance during some of the zombie fights were either more intense, they were coming right at you, or they were kind of running below you and you had to gun down as many. And then the hospital map was one of the other maps that did the worst out of the FPS tests, 123 during the capture point. It was mostly outdoor map, so this might have been one of the one point inside a map that was kind of broken open so you can see outside. It's a little bit low FPS there. 127 during fights, and then 120 during the zombie spawns. So pretty crazy numbers there. And then we also have some Shadowplay numbers. So all those numbers on that benchmark were not recorded, so you didn't see a performance impact there. So we also seeing the railway map, the 4th map. We didn't test the 5th map was the mall map. We didn't test that. It was snowy. It was just a lot of testing to do. So railway, we saw 135 FPS capturing point, 133 fights, and 129 for zombie spawns. And then Shadowplay, we saw a 6 FPS drop. So when we were recording video footage, we saw about a 4 to 11% performance impact. So 118 during fights, 116 during zombie spawns. So a little bit more of a dip during that Shadowplay recording. Some variance during fights. Zombies would sometimes come in, or during the waves you could get some pretty big performance drops. 68 FPS, 1% lows, so pretty low there. And then we get to see railway low on the low settings. So this is going to be GPU usage was actually pretty low, wasn't super optimized for this, 55 to 60% GPU usage, so not the best testing scenario here, but we did see really high 199 FPS on low for capturing a point, 181 during fights, and 176 during a spawn wave. And then we actually saw a performance increase when recording with Shadowplay. You don't normally see a performance decrease, but this could have been, again, issues with the GPU not using everything. So when recording, somehow it made it boost up a little bit more. I'm not sure, but 209 FPS, 194, and then 176. So about a 2 to 5% increase, and then about the same during zombie spawns. So pretty interesting to see that. We have some video footage of this. There'll be a link to this gameplay footage if you just want to see this without me talking. And so low settings, we start at the last half of the video, but we'll jump to the spawn point at 737. We'll see some a little bit of a boost clock right there. The GPU is being used less to lower temperature, so it boosts higher. 1965 megahertz. GPU usage was about 55 to 60, jumping around a little bit here and there. And Memory usage was a lot lower on the low settings, so 3000 on ultra and then around 1700 on low settings, and then a little bit less RAM potentially. And FPS obviously much higher, so pretty good there. CPU usage we didn't mention for ultra was around 30 to 40, and then it was a little bit more with higher frame rates, 35-ish to 40. So generally jumping around with CPU usage as well with the 9900K. So that's not quite the bottleneck, but it did jump up to 50% for like a second or two here and there. You can see in some of the video. So pretty interesting gameplay in zombies going around. There's quite a bit of blood. Forgot to mention that at the beginning. Might want to hold your hands over your eyes. So there's that. And also we have one last little third graph where you put all the fights and the maps next to each other. Museum fight was 142, 119 for the camp, 127 for hospital, the two worst maps, and then 133 for the railway, and then low settings. We also tested the Vulkan settings, so all the previous tests were on DX11, and then Vulkan is usually AMD performance improvement, but for NVIDIA we saw a little bit of a performance decrease. So don't do that on NVIDIA. You obviously want to do that on AMD cards. You'll get a performance increase there, so pretty good. And with that, there was no ultra-wide support, so we couldn't test 3840 by 1080, so ultra mega wide or ultra monitors didn't work. There was a thread saying the developer said there was going to be support, so maybe it's coming. I'm not sure on that. But aside from that, some pretty good gameplay benchmarks. You'll get some pretty high performance. It's a pretty optimized game. And aside from that, it's just some PvP tips, I guess. We can talk about some stuff like that. You'll definitely want to play a little bit. There's a bunch of different classes you can choose from that have different guns, so you'll want to play around with those. Before you switch class thinking a gun sucks or something from a primary, you'll want to upgrade your skill tree. So there's a bunch of skill trees you'll have to upgrade and get bonuses for your primary weapon can be upgraded. So definitely try to do that before you say class sucks. But there's a lot of one-shot mechanics. The striker has a rocket launcher and that'll one-shot people. Grenades and everything will usually kill people in one hit. And your melee up close is like a 3-hit kill, so that's pretty quick. So you'll definitely want to press your F key on PC. I'm not sure on console. So pretty crazy PvP, 5 different maps. There was a ton of different modes. Swarm domination is what we tested because more zombie swarms coming in. But there was a swarm skirmish where you had to kill each other, and then a bunch of other different style King of the Hill capture points. So quite a bit of PvP fun. If you're into some shooting FPSs, you want to get a little bit higher FPS to get that better reaction time and more pro gameplay. So pretty cool there for World War Z, the game that came out yesterday. And so day one benchmark numbers, so pretty interesting. And again, we'll have another episode hopefully later today. We're testing the 1060, 1660, and 1660 Ti if that's a card you have or you're thinking about getting. We'll put some numbers out there if you're also playing this game. So pretty cool. And with that, we'll have another episode besides the extra one at 1 p.m. Pacific with some more tech and game news. With that, we will be signing out. Pew 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 pew.